Hello everyone, today I'm going to be sharing with you a Copic marker tutorial using this adorable stamp set called Corgi Beach by Newton's Nook. And I've stamped my image on my Copic Express It blending card using my Memento black ink. And we're going to be coloring this guy right here. And I'm going to list all the colors down below on which color I'm using. I'll also be saying them as I am using them. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to be coloring is anything that's white on the Corgi. So since we're coloring this one with the grass skirt here, on his face, on his chest, and his feet are all white. So we want to shadow those white areas because anytime you have a white area, you just want to give it a little shadow, but you still want to make sure you leave a white space. So I'm just going to come out a little bit with each color. So I'm going to start up here so that way it looks like the white is continuing around his face, and then also in this little corner and coming down his side of the mouth. Underneath the neck there'll also be a shadowed area, and then underneath all of these little flowers on his little, or on her little necklace. So we're going to add another little shadow over here, and also going underneath the darker fur. So we're just going to kind of trace it all right along. This back foot here this foot is in front of this back foot, so we want to add a little bit of a shadow right behind there, and also right underneath the grass skirt. So now we're just going to come out a little bit more using the N1. So again, I'm just coming out a little bit just to kind of blur out the edge of that N3. So I'm coming out just a little bit more just on each of those little spots. And then again, we're going to do the same thing with N0. So like I said before, the trick to coloring white is just to give it a little bit of a shadow. So we want to leave all of this area white, so that using the N0 and doing this heavy flick, you're able to blend it nicely into that white. So it's just shadowing it, and all this in the center here is still going to be white. Now it's going to look a lot darker right now because we don't have any other color on it, but we're finished with the white areas. So now we're going to go ahead and we'll get out the R32 and R30 for the inside of his ears. We're going to start with the R32, and right here in this corner is where it's going to be the darkest because that's going inside of his ear, so that's where it's going to be the darkest to cast that shadow. And then I'm going to take my R30, blur out right along the edge of that R32, and once it's nice and blended nicely, we're just going to fill in the rest of the inside of the ear. Now let's go ahead and start coloring the darker fur on our Corgi. We're going to use E44, E43, E42, and E30. Now the reason why I'm not using E41 and I'm using E30 is because it has more of a creamy, and it has more of like a yellow base to it, and the E40 has more of a browner base, so I want to use a little bit of the E30 to give it that more of a creamy look. So I'm going to start with my E43. I don't want to start with my E44 because I don't want to go overboard with the darkness. We can always go back and add more dark, but it's a little bit harder to take it away. So right around where the darker areas on the white, that's where we're going to go ahead and start doing our area for the shadows using the E43. And then continuing this shadow underneath his head and underneath the flower, and also right at the base of where this grass skirt is. And then coming up the little furry parts, and that That's pretty much it for the shadowed areas. Then we're going to move on to E42. And this time we're going to use a little bit more color and really start filling in all of the darker fur on our Corgi. Notice I'm going into the E44 because I want to pull up some of that color. I want to be able to drag it out so that way I can get that nice smooth blend. So now I'm going to go ahead and take my E30, start right at the base of the E42 so I can pull some of that color out. And once I have it blended out right along the edge, then we'll go ahead and fill in the rest of the dark fur. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to repeat. This time I'm going to add a little bit of my E44 into the darker shadowed areas just for a little bit more definition. So I'm basically going right where I added the E43 the first time. I'm just not going as heavy. So just a tiny little flick here and there is really going to make a difference and make that stand out and pop. Now we're going to blend that out with our E43. So just come out just a little. Oh, and a little bit here. And then the same thing with 42, just come out a little bit more. Remember, this time we're going to do a little bit more of a heavy flick so that way it pulls out some of those darker colors and fills in that second layer a little bit better. And then again with my E30. All right, so now let's color in his nose. So we're going to be using N5 and N7. I'm going to start with my N7. And I'm just going to shade right on the one side of the nose and a little bit going along the top. And then I'm going to take my N5 and just fill in the rest of his little nose. Now you can also take the N5 in that little area right on each side of his tongue. We'll fill it in dark so it looks like the inside of a mouth. And then let's take our R30 and R32 again, starting with our R32, and fill in the back part of his tongue. Then we're going to take the R30 and fill in just the tip of his tongue there. Okay, so for the lay, we're going to be using Y35 and Y02. I'm going to start with my Y35 and just go a little dot in the center of each of those flowers. So I'm pushing on my nib a little bit hard so that way it goes out a little bit more. That way we have a little bit of a shadow on the base of the flower petal. So now I'm going to take my Y02 and I'm just going to fill in each of those little petals. Oops. And now for the grass skirt, we're going to be using G24, YG13, and G20. I'm going to start with my YG13. And along the bottom, on each side It's going to go up a little bit so it's a little bit lighter in the center. And then I'm also going to come out from the center and just add a little bit of a shadow on the ones that are on the inside, but it's okay if you get some on the outer side. As long as you have the gaps of white, you'll still have a nice highlight. So then I'm going to take my G20 and fill in the rest of the grass skirt. And then let's go back with our G24 and just give the grass skirt a little bit of shadows, a little bit more highlight, or shadow, the darker tone. And that will make our highlight stand out a little bit more. So I'm just going to come out on the ones that are kind of tucked on the inside. And again, just maybe coming up on the one side of each of those, or not each of them, but some of them. So that way you have a little bit of a contrast. All right, and that is it. We finished coloring our Corgi, and he's all ready to be placed on a card. I hope you enjoyed this Copic marker tutorial. I'm going to link below to the stamp set from Newton's Nook, and also link all of the Copic colors that I used. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.